Everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. On this episode, I'm talking with someone who knows the world of thrillers very well as the thrilling world of book publishing and getting to share stories in prose form, and that is author Erik Dreiling. Erik, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
A pleasure, absolutely a pleasure. And the books that I know are Operation Silent Serpent as well as Twilight Hawk. Those are the two that are Amazonable, um, so to speak.
Yes, they're the first two entries in my Fractured Timeline series.
Nice, nice. Well, I know that we're talking some thriller elements. I know that you're a science fiction fan as well, so lots to talk about there. And curious by means of an origin question, how you connected with storytelling and publishing.
Uh, well, as far as writing, that actually goes way back to, I'd say, like around the first grade.
Hmm.
I was a little bit more into books than I was with toys. And remember, Stuart Little was the very first book that I read on my own. And then it just went from there. And then as I got older, I discovered more like adventure stories, science fiction. And then I just kind of got to thinking, well, what kind of story can I share with readers, with like-minded readers? So that's kind of where I got started. And then Fractured Timeline became a thing. And then it just took off from there. It's
Oh,
actually
cool.
Fractured Timeline, what became Operation Silent Serpent started way back in 1996. I started
Wow.
working out. Yeah, that was, of course, I was only 15 at the time, and my writing was rough. So I had the ideas, but I was still building my skills. So it took quite a while, but got there.
Nice, nice. Yeah. It's always a journey, right?
Oh,
Improving and becoming a writer. And I don't know that it ever actually stops.
it doesn't. And as a writer, you never really stop learning. You never get to a point and go, oh, well, there's no more to learn. There's always
Mm.
something new or a way you can do something better. And I've learned that with my current writing project, which is book three in Fractured Timeline series, Viper's Den. And there was a whole so it was with fight scenes. I always
Hmm.
struggled with those, and Kyle Hanna, he had a lot of patience. He sat down over Zoom, he worked with me, and uh, we well, I struggled through it, and he was like, "Oh no, you can do this, and you can have him do that, and you can break up the action, move back to it, so it's not just one continuous, drawn out, action scene on the page." So, like I said, it's the writing itself is always a journey. There's always something new to learn.
And as you mentioned, it's collaborative as well. It's good to have
Yes.
a good, thoughtful editor that's there to talk through things and help get that page together. And I was going to ask about that, balancing suspense and pacing as well as character. So, any tricks there that you've learned that you'd like to share?
Well, what actually I was taught, it was through the Jumpmaster Press writing seminars a couple of years ago when they did them like, I think it was like once a month. Um, we had an entire section on crafting action scenes. And what I learned was depending on how many characters are present, if you have two characters that are fighting, but you have like three or four other characters that are nearby that can witness the action, you start with the action and then you kind of go back to how the other characters are seeing it,
Mhm.
right? What's going on with them, and then you bring it back to the action. So it's not just one continuous drawn out where the reader is slogging through like, okay, they do this and they do that. You kind of show the other action going on. It may not be a fight scene. Maybe they're struggling to defuse a bomb or save a life or something else equally important that's going on. And then you just kind of play off the other like that. So it's full of action, but it's not just focused on one aspect. You have other elements moving at the same time.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah, interesting. Sort of like a camera shooting this, then
Hmm.
shooting back, then shooting. Yeah.
That's actually a great way to think about it. Like if this was like a TV show or a movie, like how would you see it? Like what would the camera see? And camera in your mind. So what I do is if there are no other people present, I start with the environment first.
Hmm.
I just don't jump into the action and go, okay, they're fighting. If there are no other characters around, what I do is I set the scene. Like
Hmm.
if there was a battle that happened before, like if there was a fight scene that I just got done editing myself for Viper's Den, and I realized the action moved too fast. So you want to build the suspense a little bit, draw it out just the right amount. How does the environment affect the fight or the conflict? Where is it taking place? Who else is involved? You have all these factors that come together and that can
Hmm.
actually determine who wins, who loses, how the fight progresses. So it's important to keep in mind what you have rather than trying to come up with something new. Focus first on what you do have, and perhaps there's a way to expand upon it, to utilize it in a different way, and then you take it from there.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And curious about because you're crafting thrillers and because there are real world bits here, any part of the research process that you engage in?
Yes, what I do beforehand, if to go for realism, I will Google like what happens if you sustain this type of injury, or how likely is it that a person can survive that kind of injury. And then obviously with fiction, you gotta have to like tweak it just a little bit for dramatic purposes. So it's not
Hmm.
always going to be 100% on the nose realistic, but if it's realistic enough, then readers generally are going to be more forgiving about that. But if it's just someone gets shot in the arm, they keep running, they don't feel a thing. No, you're you're going to feel it. It's going to affect how you move and what happens after. So I keep those in mind, and I actually have a bookmark website on my computer. I'll always reference it if I get stuck or if I'm not sure. I'll go to it and be like, well, how likely is it if this happens that the character can continue on? So there is a bit of research, especially for the action scenes. And since I write science fiction, I want to get the key details correct.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, because with science fiction, someone's going to want to look it up. Someone's going to want to say, well, I want to know if this is true. So, with that in mind, I try to get the facts as accurate as possible and written in a way that doesn't speak down to the reader, but at the same time makes sense for the audience.
Yeah, my science fiction is kind of my go-to genre when I'm not reading something else. That's a comfort spot for me. So to just tuck a question in here, what connects you with science fiction? What is it about science fiction that draws you in?
The escapism. Uh,
Yeah.
when everything else gets to be a little too rough and you just kind of need a break from it all, a good story can but for me, it helps me relax. And I always find solace somehow in reading about characters whose problems far exceed mine. So when I'm sitting down writing, I keep that in mind as well.
Hmm.
And I'm not writing a science documentary. I'm not writing a, a research paper. I'm creating an engaging science fiction, a military science fiction action adventure. And it's
Hmm.
about also understanding what kind of audience that you're writing for. So obviously I'm not going to attract someone who writes, who reads and enjoys romance novels. But for the action oriented readers, you got to kind of know what they're going to expect and how as an author can you make that connection to the reader.
Yeah, yeah. That also taps into some of your life experience because I know you have a history as a military veteran, and so I'm curious about the ways that your experiences get translated in.
Yes, I served in the United States Army. I was a 91 Bravo mechanic. And in that MOS, you encounter some of the most unique people. They'll come in, they'll need their Humvee fixed or their water buffalo maintained or uh, something fixed.
Hmm.
And some of the, while you're working on it, you're kind of keeping an ear out to what's being said around you so you can be aware of what's going on. And some of the conversations, some of the things that people say, just off the top of the head, it's like, that would actually make for a great like line in a book or something. So I'll try to file it away and I'll have a notebook on me and I'll jot down the ideas. As a matter of fact, I had an LT. He uh, he had something similar where he wasn't a writer, but he was always enjoying some of the just off the cuff things people would say. So he actually
Hmm.
had a bigger notebook and he would write down word for word and who said it. And we were training one day and we caught him with this notebook. We're like, sir, we've always been needing to ask, what exactly are you doing with this notebook? And so he tells us. And so I kind of adapted a similar approach for writing because some of the greatest things happen in real life. It's something that somebody said or it's a person that you knew. So being in the military itself, certain key details are easy, like how to clear a weapon, how to handle a weapon. Um, you want to get those details right when you're writing military sci-fi because you're going to upset. But like, if a veteran is reading your book and you get the details wrong, they're going to let you know. And being a
Hmm.
veteran myself, I would know better. So I make sure that those details are accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll also say here, thank you for your service. Yeah, yeah. Uh, by means of a final question that's on the list, but we can, of course, tuck in anything else that you'd like. I always like to ask where people can go and find out more about your work, go and buy books, go and perhaps meet you if you go to author signings and things like that. Anything of that nature that you'd like to mention.
Yes. Well, jumpmasterpress.com. That's going to be the best place to find copies of Fractured Timeline. You go to the website, you type the book title in their little search bar, and it will take you right to it. Also, I do have a Facebook author page. It's quite easy to find. It's Erik Dreiling Author. And I have direct links for book purchases as well as an active page. Right now I have about 45 followers, but obviously I'm looking to amass, more. About every 4 to 5 days, I'm adding something new to the page. So there's always fresh content coming through, whether it's advertising a book for one of my fellow Jumpmaster Press authors or a segment that I like to do called Behind the Book,
Mhm.
where I take a moment and I explain something to my followers about the first two books I'd written, whether it's a chapter that had been removed or a character that was originally portrayed differently in an earlier draft. Um, I always find it more interesting, way to talk with to reach out to the readers when you give them little tidbits. Like originally, this chapter here didn't have those scenes; it had this instead. But here's why it was removed. So at the same time, it kind of gives the reader a little insight into the writing process. So what you see
Mhm.
on page wasn't always how it was envisioned. So by doing behind the book segments, I find it, interesting to reach out to the reader and let them know a little bit about the writing process and how a book comes to be.
Very cool. Very cool. Love that. Love getting to share the process. I'm always interested in that as well.
Yeah, it's I always talk to if somebody reaches out to me through email, which is Erik Dreiling Author at Outlook. Um, I'm always responding to emails too. It probably takes a day or two, but I do respond to all the emails. I love talking about the writing process, how an idea goes from conception to on the page. And like we were saying earlier, that in itself is its own journey, it's its own adventure. It's
Hmm.
never a point A to point B. It's always here, there, and everywhere in between before you finally get to the finished product.
Yeah,
So that's kind of another reason
absolutely.
why I did the behind the book segments on my author page. And another thing I'd like to do is AI art. I kind of got a little interest in that going. So what I do is I have an app on my phone, and I'll pull character descriptions from my book, and I'll run it
Hmm.
through the AI filter just to see what they think the characters look like. And I used a realistic photo. And for those that are interested, you can go to Erik Dreiling Author on Facebook, and you can find all those photos. And some of them I don't necessarily agree with, but others, like the realistic ones, it's like, yes, that is it.
I love it. Yeah, that's a cool use of AI to just think about that as character building, and love that there are also parts that you go, not quite, and then others that fit the description.
It's always interesting because I can't speak for other authors, but I do know that when the book is going through the editing phase, I'm always wondering, well, I wonder how the reader is going to envision the character. Are they going to come up with something completely different? Are we going to be on
Hmm.
the same wavelength? It's just interesting. So when I run it through the AI filter, it's like, oh, yes, that's it. Or sometimes it's like, I don't know, because those AI filters sometimes will give you like an extra finger or a misplaced eye, like you'll one eye up here, another, and it's like, oh no. So you got to be,
True,
definitely got to be careful with those AI apps and filters. So it's always
true,
interesting to
true.
see what comes up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm certainly glad to share about the books and glad to share the Facebook group link as well as the publisher page. Is there anything else that you'd like to mention before we close out? Anything that we've missed?
Um, Actually, yeah, I was going to mention this earlier, but when I said that the original idea for Operation Silent Serpent came back way back in 1996, it took me from start to finish about like 22, 23 years to actually
Wow.
see my story published. Now, when I was a teenager, I actually tried. Back when we used the phone books, I remember I picked
Mhm.
up the phone book. I looked at the yellow pages for publishers. Even though I didn't have a book, I didn't have a single word written to these books. I had the idea. I was trying to sell an idea, and I was hoping back then the way I was thinking was, well, if I have the idea and someone's interested, then I can just write the book and they won't know. Doesn't work that way. No, no.
Right.
If anybody is thinking that, no, always have the product, at least the first draft done, something that the publisher can say, "Hey, this is good," or "This needs to be worked on." Um, I know Jumpmaster Press had a similar approach where I had submitted Operation Silencer, and I got a letter back saying, "Well, it is still a bit rough around the edges, but this is not a rejection letter. There is potential. Here are the key points we would like to see you work on." And that in itself, that approach, it got me all fired up. I wasn't thinking, oh man, I got rejected. I was thinking, oh my God, I got somebody's attention. I have to keep going.
Ah,
So
yeah.
I, hours upon hours sitting back when I had just nothing but a laptop, and I was just belting it out. And I sent it back a couple more times. And then finally, I got the letter. The official announcement was made over one of their seminars when they used to live stream over Facebook. And this is like right before the pandemic, too, like before. And they all turned to the camera and they congratulated me because they picked up the book and they were going to sign me. And it was just a 20 some odd journey. And that's where it led me. And then writing Twilight Hawk, I wouldn't say it was easy because now I'm writing book two. Now I got to start thinking ahead. Silent Serpent is done. It's out there in the world. It's in the reader's hand. Now I got to think, how is the story going to continue? And Viper's Den is going to be the final installment in the Fractured Timeline series because with time travel books, more often than not, they work best as trilogies.
Hmm. Hmm.
And writing the final installment, in a way, it's kind of like watching your kids grow up, and then you wish them luck as they go out into the world on their own. With the characters, it's like you've been with them since day one. Now the story is over.
Hmm.
Now that they go out there, now they're to be read and enjoyed by readers. And it's a little, I'll be honest, it is a little sad for me. And it's like, I've been with these characters for so long, now I got to say goodbye. So that is a whole other journey too. But if you can form as a writer a connection with the characters, even if you're just writing something that you think sounds cool on the page and throw it out there without having that connection, the reader's going to know. They're going to thumb through those pages and go, man, did this guy even care? So even with the minor characters, my advice to any aspiring author out there is, even with the minor characters in your book, give them some sort of defining characteristic. Give them, maybe they have a tick, or they stutter, or maybe I have one character, a side character. He does the sign of the cross before he goes on a mission. No other character in my book does that. So you want to create, even the minor characters, you want to create some semblance of a connection. So that way they go, oh, that's kind of neat. Or, hey, I'd like to know more about this guy. But when you kill him off, it's like,
Yeah.
as Stephen
Then you
King
have that
said, kill your
connection.
darlings.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. You have to create these people, create those connections, and then sometimes, unfortunately, those emotions play in.
Right. And world building isn't always about what you see. Like, what do the buildings look like? What do the trees look like? World building, too, can be about the characters that inhabit them. So if it's like a modern day world, there's not too much that separates it from our world. How are the people? How do they interact? Like, how do they represent
Mm,
society? And that's where I go. Like, if I'm stuck on something, I'll turn to the characters. And then I'll say,
nice.
okay, well, I'm going to world build through them and see how the story turns out.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. But I think that's such an important part of story, and so key that you do that, keeping the characters at center. You can have all the cool things, and you're
Mhm.
talking about action scenes. You can have the coolest action scene, but unless you're invested, that's really the where the rubber meets the road of it all.
Right. And if there are no other characters around where you don't want to do too many jumping back and forth. And that's the double-edged sword part of it. You don't want to do it too much, because then you're constantly pulling the reader out of the action. So that's, as the writer, that's where a part of the challenge comes in. It's like, how do I balance the two and not confuse the reader?
Yeah.
So a scene that
Yeah.
I'm editing right now, there's only four people present, and they're all like, it's two on two. So I focus more on the environment. It's like, okay, well, let's treat the environment as a character. How can the environment either help or hinder the protagonist? How could it even help the antagonist? So I look at that, and then that's when everything starts coming together. And another bit of writing advice for aspiring authors is this: writing a book is not a race. You have many prolific authors like Stephen King, who may be able to write a book in 2 to 3 weeks or a month. But then you have other authors like George R. Martin, who's 13 years late writing Winds of Winter. Point is, you have prolific authors on different sides of the creative spectrum. There is
Mhm.
no set amount. There is nothing set in stone saying you have to have a book done in X amount of time. It's however long it takes to get it out there. And if you rush it, you're going to miss some things. You're going to miss either important plot elements, grammar, uh, and otherwise it could cause more of a delay for you. So my advice is, take your time, get to know your characters, get to know the world they live in. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm not sure what I'm doing. This is what I want to do. And I promise you, it'll be a better outcome. Whatever that outcome is, it'll be a better outcome than just rushing it and trying to be a record that nobody put out there in the first place.
Very well said. I love the process and glad that the trilogy is coming together. I hope that there are plans beyond that as well. Hope you continue telling stories.
I do have a couple of short stories set in the fractured timeline world, but that's a ways away. I do have another after Viper's Den. I do have one other writing project in the works. It's a completely different genre. So I will say this much: it is a supernatural tale. So I'm going to step
Cool.
out of my comfort zone. I want to see how good I can really be in a different genre.
Nice. Nice. Well, I love the genre play as well, and wishing you well in the creative journey.
Thank you.
Certainly glad to have you back anytime as you're crafting these worlds, and many, many thanks for the conversation.
Always happy to come back.